You've seen the reels: infinity pools, sunlit balconies, and a waiter who knows your dessert order by night 2. That's the vacation fantasy. But then there's Tom. He sold his condo, booked 120 days at sea, and thought he'd hacked retirement. By week 6, lobster night felt like leftovers, the comedy show was on repeat, and he admitted he missed cooking his own eggs at home. Stories like his are why we're here today, because when you peel back the brochure shine, life at sea isn't always the dream you expect. Every year, more than 30 million people take a cruise, but only a tiny fraction even attempt long-term living. And by the end of this video, you'll see why. So let's start with the first crack in the dream: the illusion of endless luxury. Cruise lines love to sell the idea that every single day will feel like a 5-star fantasy. Dinner served under chandeliers, live music in every lounge, a spa just one elevator ride away. And for a week or two, it really does feel like you've hacked the system. You're never hungry, never bored, never lifting a finger. But stretch that out for months and something changes. Lobster night, which felt like a treat on day 1, turns into, oh, lobster again? By day 50. The comedy show that once had you laughing until your cheeks hurt, you've seen it so many times you can recite the punchlines before the comic even grabs the mic. Even the music scene starts to blur. You love jazz? Great, but now it's the same 3 bands, same playlists, same solos. The spa that melted your stress away the first time? After your 10th massage, it feels more like a conveyor belt of tired hands. One long-term cruiser once told me, "People think I'm living like a king. In reality, it's like staying in the same resort that never changes." The scenery outside the window moves, but inside, it's the same shows, the same faces, the same dinners. The luxury disappears. All that's left is repetition. That's the hidden catch. Cruise ships are designed to dazzle in short bursts. As a vacation, they're magic. As a lifestyle, sameness creeps in fast. But if you really want to try it, there are tricks to keep the sparkle alive. Rotate between restaurants instead of sticking to the buffet, skip a show or 2 each week so you don't burn out, or plan little resets on board to refresh your sense of novelty. Small moves like that don't erase the repetition, but they stretch out the magic a little longer. Eventually, though, even the best tricks can only do so much. Once that shine wears off, you start noticing the next trap, the kind that doesn't just chip away at your excitement, but at your bank account. On paper, living on a cruise ship looks like a bargain. You'll hear people brag, it's cheaper than rent. And at first glance, they're not wrong. You can snag repositioning cruises or long stay deals for around $100 a night. That's roughly $3,000 a month, room, food, entertainment, and transportation all rolled in. Compare that to a New York apartment, and it feels like a steal. But here's the part the brochures don't highlight. Cruise ships are floating money machines. Everything beyond that base fare is designed to tempt you into swiping your cruise card. Drink packages, shore excursions, specialty restaurants, spa treatments, casino nights, Wi-Fi bundles, laundry fees, souvenir shops. The list never ends. Even the basics sneak up on you. A Wi-Fi plan can cost $25 a day. Laundry, about $5 to wash a single shirt. Automatic gratuities run $15 to $20 per person per day, and they add up fast. I've met people who boarded with a tidy plan. We'll spend $3,000 a month tops. By the time they added up the extras, the bill doubled, $6,000 or even $7,000 a month. That's more expensive than a luxury apartment on land. The trick is, you don't feel like you're spending. You're not pulling out cash. You're just tapping a plastic card that feels more like a hotel key than a wallet. Then, at the end of the trip, or the end of the month, the folio arrives like a tidal wave. If you want to keep the dream alive, you need discipline. Set a weekly spending cap. Check your balance every 3 days and treat the cruise card like it's real cash leaving your pocket. Without that, the cheaper than rent fantasy can sink you faster than rough seas. And while the money might sting, the next reality check hits even closer to home, literally. Let's talk about the cabin you'll actually be living in. When people imagine living on a cruise ship, they picture themselves in a balcony suite. Morning coffee, ocean breeze, dolphins swimming by. It's the dream. But the truth for most long-term residents? No balcony, No window, just an inside cabin. Why? Because balconies are way too expensive to keep month after month. So the reality is a 150 square foot box, smaller than the average American bedroom, with everything crammed inside. Bed, tiny closet, bathroom, maybe a desk if you're lucky. And since the walls are thin, you'll often hear your neighbor's TV, their snoring, or the late-night hallway chatter. At first, it feels cozy, a little adventurous even. But give it a few weeks, and it starts to feel like you're living inside a closet that rocks back and forth with the ocean. I once talked to a couple who tried it for 6 months. They described it as living in a shaking wardrobe, and by the end, they were desperate for a real window. Storage is another battle. Cruise cabins aren't built for a long-term wardrobe or hobbies. You'll learn minimalism quickly whether you want to or not. That guitar collection? Forget it. A closet full of shoes? Pick your 2 favorites. Everything else stays behind on land. Some people make it work. They bring small comforts from home, add decorations, or create routines that make the space feel personal. But even then, the cabin isn't just a place to sleep. It becomes your entire mental space. And when that space shrinks, your world does too. If you ever try it, a small survival kit makes all the difference. A daylight lamp to mimic sunrise, magnetic hooks for extra storage on metal walls, compression bags to shrink your wardrobe, and one daily ritual, like a morning walk on deck to soak in real sunlight. Little hacks like these don't make the cabin bigger, but they make it livable, at least for a while. The real test is time. Try booking an inside cabin for 30 or 60 days and see how you handle the lack of natural light, the tight quarters, and the constant storage puzzle. If you can adapt with those tricks and still feel balanced, then maybe you're truly cut out for it. But even if you can survive the cabin, there's another challenge waiting. The feeling of isolation that sneaks in when your world is reduced to the same walls and constantly changing strangers. At first, it seems impossible. How could you ever feel lonely when you're surrounded by thousands of people every single day? The pool deck is packed, the bars are buzzing, the dining room is a social free-for-all. But long-term living is different. On land, you've got your favorite cafe, your circle of friends, the family dinners you can count on. On a cruise ship, your entire social world resets every week. The couple you connected with at trivia night, they're gone by Saturday. The friends you took a shore excursion with, off the ship, never to be seen again. It starts to feel like you're living in a revolving door of temporary relationships. You get good at quick introductions and small talk, but deep connections are rare and fleeting. That cycle of hello and goodbye wears you down more than you expect. And the ship itself can feel like a bubble. The same hallways, the same lounges, the same daily routines. For vacationers, that repetition feels comforting. For residents, it shrinks the world into a polished cage. Psychologists even have a term for this, the gilded cage effect. From the outside, it looks luxurious. From the inside, it can feel like you're trapped. One retiree told me, it's like Groundhog Day, except the view outside changes. Inside, same buffet, same shows, same faces. After a while, it stops being exciting and starts being suffocating. That's the hidden toll nobody puts in the brochure. Living long-term on a ship doesn't just test your budget, it tests your mind. And if the mental weight doesn't get you, the next challenge might. Because life at sea also has a way of wearing down your body. Cruising sells itself as effortless relaxation. Good food, warm sunshine, endless leisure. And for vacationers, that's mostly true. But if you live on board long-term, the environment slowly takes a toll. First, there's the obvious, germs. Every week, thousands of new passengers come aboard from all over the world, bringing whatever colds, stomach bugs, or viruses are circulating back home. On land, you can avoid crowded spaces if you're sick. On a ship, you share elevators, buffets, and the same recycled air. Outbreaks of norovirus, seasonal flu, even COVID, they spread fast in such a contained space. Yes, there's a medical center, but it's designed for short-term care. Fevers, sprains, maybe a prescription refill. If something serious happens, heart attack, stroke, severe allergic reaction, you're looking at a medical evacuation by helicopter or rescue boat. That can run into tens of thousands of dollars if insurance doesn't cover it. Then there's the lifestyle itself. It's a running joke that people gain weight on cruises, but imagine when the cruise never ends. Buffets loaded with fried food, late-night pizza, bottomless cocktails, and desserts on repeat. It adds up fast. Sure, there's a gym, but it's small, crowded, and the rocking of the ship makes some workouts uncomfortable. Many long-term residents admit to gaining 20 or 30 pounds in the first year, not because they're lazy, but because the environment works against healthy routines. Another hidden problem: nutrition gaps. Ship food is often mass-produced and heavy on carbs and fats. Fresh fruit and vegetables can be limited between ports, so deficiencies in vitamins creep in over time. Combine that with weeks spent in a windowless cabin, and you risk low vitamin D, weaker bones, and a sluggish immune system. So while the brochures promise a life of wellness and ease, the reality is more complicated. Long-term cruising can slowly wear down your health, physically and mentally, unless you're very intentional about fighting back. While your body is adjusting, you'll also notice another divide on board, one that separates passengers from the very people who make the ship run. At first, ship life feels like one big family. The bartender remembers your drink, your cabin steward greets you with a smile, and waiters seem genuinely happy to see you. It feels warm, almost personal, like you found a second home. But stay long enough, and you notice the invisible wall. Guests live in a world of buffets, shows, and balcony views. Crew live below deck, in shared cabins the size of closets, often with no windows, working 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week. Their meals are basic, their downtime limited, and their world is completely separate from yours. Even when you build rapport, the rules are strict. Friendships can only go so far. Romantic connections are usually forbidden. Crossing that professional line can cost a crew member their job. There's also a cultural and economic divide. Many crew come from developing countries, earning around $1,000 to $2,000 a month, while serving passengers who can spend that much in a week. That imbalance makes genuine connection difficult, no matter how much you like each other. For long-term passengers, this creates a strange middle ground. You're no longer just a tourist, but you'll never truly belong to the crew either. You float between both worlds, but don't fully fit in either, and that limbo can feel surprisingly lonely. And here's the important part: respect the boundary. Tip generously, show appreciation, but don't push crew to bend the rules or give you special treatment. What feels like a harmless favor to you could put their livelihood at risk. The social divide is tough, but it's not the only challenge. Even the community of fellow passengers isn't as stable as it seems. On land, even if you move around a lot, there's usually some kind of anchor: your local coffee shop, neighbors you recognize, coworkers you see every week. On a cruise ship, that anchor never exists. Every 7 days or so, thousands of people roll their suitcases off, and a brand new crowd rolls theirs on. At first, it feels exciting. You're constantly meeting new faces, sharing dinners, going on excursions together. It's almost like speed dating with travel buddies. But after months, the cycle wears you down. Just when you connect with someone, they're gone for good. And you start to realize, for everyone else, this is the trip of a lifetime. For you, it's just Tuesday. That mismatch changes how you relate to people. Their energy is all about squeezing joy into a week. Yours is about surviving another month. Eventually, the constant hellos and goodbyes make you feel like you're the only one left in the classroom after the bell rings, watching everyone else walk out the door. Unlike RV travelers who can circle back to the same parks and reconnect with familiar faces, ship life doesn't give you that luxury. The community resets whether you like it or not. Deep, lasting friendships are rare, and often you find yourself surrounded by retirees whose routines or interests don't always match your own. One woman put it perfectly: it's like being the kid who has to stay after school every day while all your friends go home. You meet people, but you're always the one left behind. While you're juggling the social churn, another challenge creeps in: the maze of paperwork, taxes, and legal rules that suddenly matter when the ship becomes your home. When you're just a vacationer, the paperwork is simple. Show your passport, board the ship, enjoy your trip. But once you try to live on board, things get complicated fast. Take taxes, for example. If you're at sea 10 months a year, where exactly do you file? Are you still considered a tax resident in your home country? Do you qualify for expat exemptions? Every country has its own rules, and the gray areas can turn into expensive surprises. Healthcare is another minefield. Most insurance plans don't cover long-term life at sea. Need prescription refills? You might have to plan your entire itinerary around port days in certain countries just to get your meds. Miss the timing, and you're stuck. Then there's visas. Cruise lines handle port entry for short-term guests, but if you're effectively living on the ship, you can run into legal snags. I've heard of residents being denied reboarding because their visa quietly expired mid-journey. And don't forget about everyday logistics: banking, voting, even getting mail. On land, those are simple. At sea, you're patching together solutions: mail forwarding services, family handling your paperwork, or juggling accounts online with shaky Wi-Fi. It's a constant juggle, and the cruise line isn't there to help. Their job is to sell you a cabin, not manage your life. Living on a ship sounds like freedom, but in reality, it can feel like a never-ending stack of forms and rules you didn't even know existed. One of the biggest reasons people dream about living on a cruise ship is the idea of constant adventure. Wake up in the Caribbean one week, Europe the next, Alaska after that. It sounds like a highlight reel that never ends. And for a while, it is. The first time you step onto a tropical beach or wander through a medieval town, it's magical. But months later, those same ports start blending together. Caribbean islands begin to feel identical. Rows of souvenir shops, crowded beaches, duty-free jewelry stores. Even the charm of European cities dulls when you only get 6 hours ashore before rushing back on board, knowing you'll be back at the exact same dock in 2 weeks. The biggest problem is that you're not in charge of the itinerary. The ship dictates where you go, how long you stay, and when you have to leave. Instead of true freedom, it becomes a loop you can't break. The very thing that felt venturous at first, the constant movement, slowly turns into repetition. Instead of chasing discovery, you find yourself skipping port days altogether because nothing feels new anymore. The sense of exploration that sold you on the dream quietly erodes until another new destination feels more like the same story with a different backdrop. Cruise ships are built for vacations, not for permanent living. And that means when something goes wrong, your safety net is thinner than you think. A technical failure can shut down an entire section of the ship. A plumbing issue might leave a whole deck without working toilets. Severe weather can reroute your trip overnight, leaving you stranded far from where you expected to be. And in rare but real cases, fires, power outages, or disease outbreaks, the entire ship can grind to a halt. For vacationers, these are inconveniences. They go home, get a refund, and move on with their lives. But if the ship is your home, the disruption is total. You don't have an apartment waiting for you on land. Your entire world is tied to a single vessel, and when it falters, so does your life. Even smaller issues carry weight. Theft in your cabin, conflicts with other passengers. On land, you'd call local authorities. At sea, you're limited to the ship's own security staff, with far fewer resources. That constant awareness lingers in the back of your mind. Most days, life feels smooth, but deep down you know, if something big goes wrong, you can't just walk away. Your fate is tied to the ship, for better or worse. The more these worries pile up, along with the money, the cabin, the health, the isolation, the more they chip away at your energy. That's when the slow burn of exhaustion begins to show. Exhaustion at sea doesn't hit you all at once. It sneaks in slowly, almost invisibly. At first, the freedom feels intoxicating. You've escaped the daily grind, you're meeting new people, waking up to new horizons. But over time, the cracks start to show. You stop getting excited about dinner because it's the same menu on repeat. The shows you once lined up for now feel like background noise. Ports that once thrilled you blur together until you don't even bother getting off the ship. The hardest part is you don't notice it happening. It creeps in quietly, restless nights from the ship's constant hum, irritability at little things you once found charming sudden pangs of homesickness that hit out of nowhere. If you ignore those signals, the weight can slide into something heavier, full-on burnout or even depression. One day, you wake up and realize the dream has turned into a treadmill you can't step off. That's when many long-term cruisers finally quit. They trade the freedom of life at sea for the normalcy of land, chores, rent, and all. A few push through, but by then it's less about joy and more about endurance. There's another shadow that doesn't get talked about much: the impact on the ocean itself. Cruise ships are massive engines of consumption. A single large vessel can burn through fuel at a rate that releases as much CO2 in a day as 10,000 cars. Multiply that across an entire fleet, and the floating paradise starts to look a lot less innocent. Living long-term on board means you don't just witness this footprint, you're part of it. Wastewater, plastics, cleaning chemicals, all of it flows into the same seas you fall asleep watching from the deck. The coral reefs, the fish, the turquoise waters, they're the very things you've come to admire, yet the lifestyle quietly contributes to their decline. Some cruise lines are trying to pivot, experimenting with cleaner fuels, better recycling systems, greener designs. But progress is slow, and upgrades often come with higher fares that get passed down to passengers. For long-term residents, that creates a moral dilemma. Is this dream worth the environmental debt it racks up? Over time, that awareness weighs on people. You wanted adventure and beauty, but the truth is you're helping to erode the very world you set out to explore. Cruise ads love to show smiling families, kids splashing in pools, parents sipping cocktails, everyone discovering the world together. For a week-long vacation, that image works. But stretch it into a lifestyle, and the cracks appear fast. Education is the first hurdle. Cruise ships have kids' clubs, sure, but they're designed for play, not school. Long-term families often turn to online homeschooling, which sounds fine until the Wi-Fi cuts out mid-lesson, or worse, mid-exam. Over time, children fall behind in subjects that require structure, like science or history tied to a specific curriculum. Then there's the space problem. Cabins feel tight for one or two people. Pack in a family, and it's a recipe for tension. Kids get restless, parents get frustrated, and suddenly the floating home feels more like a crowded box. Even onboard play areas can feel overwhelming, loud, crowded, overstimulating. One parent told me, "My son loved it for the first few months, but after a while he just wanted a real playground and friends he could actually keep." Routine becomes another invisible weight. Kids crave stability, familiar teachers, consistent friends, predictable schedules. Ship life is the opposite: constant turnover, shifting time zones, and a social circle that evaporates every week. What starts as an adventure can quietly become an emotional strain on both parents and children. For many families, it's the breaking point, the realization that the dream of raising kids at sea doesn't line up with the reality of what kids actually need. One of the biggest selling points of modern cruising is the fantasy of remote work. Picture yourself on a Zoom call with the ocean as your backdrop, knocking out emails while sipping iced coffee on the balcony. It sounds like the ultimate work-life balance. But the truth is, cruise ships are some of the least friendly places for serious remote work. The Wi-Fi is expensive, unstable, and laggy. Video calls drop out, large files refuse to send, and even a simple email can take forever on a bad day. If your job depends on reliable internet, frustration is guaranteed. Then, there's the time zone shuffle. Every few days, you might jump an hour forward or back, which wrecks your schedule if your team's on land. Meetings that used to be in the morning are suddenly at midnight. Your sleep cycle takes the hit, and productivity plummets. The cabin itself doesn't help either. That tiny desk you thought would be fine, it doubles as your dining table, laundry station, and storage shelf. Privacy is non-existent, and background noise, from hallway chatter to ship announcements, finds its way into every call. Plenty of digital nomads try it, imagining the ship as a floating office. Most admit later that it disrupted their work, stalled projects, or even cost them opportunities. The ship is designed for leisure, not career growth, and that truth becomes harder to ignore the longer you stay. cruise life can test relationships in ways few people expect. For couples, that cozy little cabin quickly turns into a pressure cooker. There's no personal space to cool off after an argument, no escape from each other's quirks, and no option for a night out alone. The closeness that feels romantic at first can morph into tension when you're living it 24/7. I've met couples who boarded hoping the lifestyle would bring them closer, only to discover it magnified every small conflict. One wife told me, "We thought we'd reconnect at sea. Instead, we fought more than ever. Without space to breathe, every little issue grew bigger." Friendships take a hit too. On land, you can nurture bonds over time. At sea, your social circle dissolves week after week as passengers rotate off. You're left trying to build connections that are gone before they deepen. It's possible to feel surrounded by people, yet completely alone. Even family ties strain. Parents traveling with kids wrestle with constant togetherness in cramped quarters. Adult children visiting long-term parents may find the lifestyle isolating or impractical. Over time, the dream of quality time together sometimes flips into resentment. Relationships thrive on balance: time together, time apart, shared routines, and stable support systems. A cruise ship upends all of that, and unless you're prepared, the very connections you hoped would flourish may instead start to fray. When you zoom out, the dream of living on a cruise ship looks very different from the fantasy. The luxury fades into routine, the cheap lifestyle quietly doubles in cost, the cabin shrinks your world, and the constant turnover of people chips away at your sense of belonging. Add in health risks, legal tangles, the fragile safety net, and the emotional toll. It's no wonder so few people stick with it long term. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are people who thrive in this lifestyle. They love waking up to a new horizon. They enjoy shedding the chores and bills of land life, and they find joy in the simplicity of having the world delivered to their doorstep. For them, the trade-offs are worth it. The real takeaway is this: before you dive in, test the waters. Book a 30, 60, or even 90-day stay and pay close attention to how you feel. Can you handle the cabin, the routine, the goodbyes? If yes, maybe ship life suits you. If not, you'll have saved yourself from a very expensive experiment. So if you've ever dreamed about calling a cruise ship home, know that the dream has two sides: the glittering promise and the hidden price. The question isn't whether it's possible, it's whether it's right for you. Now I'd love to hear from you. What's the most surprising, funny, or even frustrating experience you've ever had on a cruise? Drop it in the comments. I always enjoy reading your stories. And if you found this breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's been flirting with the idea of cruise life. Because sometimes, knowing the real story is the best souvenir you can bring home.